Hey, Disturb listeners, Darcey and Stacey, let's watch.
I know it's something that we've talked about before, but I'm hoping he'll seriously rethink his stance. I don't think he gets it because I'm getting older and there's a small window of time.
Speaking of family, was thinking, maybe we should talk a little more about kids in the future.
Okay, so they talked about this in last episode, and I was concerned about the way they were talking about it because they weren't really owning their own feelings and speaking from that place. They were more deflecting and subtly pressuring the other person, seemingly. And we've already started from a place of not owning one's feelings when Stacey says, I think we should talk about it. What would be another way that Stacey could open this conversation? Well, what I would recommend that she do is, Florian, I love you and I want to have kids. I'm dying to have kids. I really want to have kids. And I'm terrified that if we don't have kids now, or we don't start the process now, that biologically I won't be able to have kids in the future. And that would really, really crush me. I want us to be a family, and it's a big deal to me. How do you feel? And then Florian might say something like, I'm guessing, honey, I love you so much, and I would love to have a family with you, but I feel like I've had so many changes. We got married, I moved to the States, and having kids, it would overwhelm me. I want to get started with my career. And honestly, if we never had kids, no offense, it actually wouldn't bother me that much. But if we had kids, I don't think I can really have kids for, I don't know, at least a few years from now. And, let's continue talking about it. But, knowing your feelings, owning them and stating them rather than passive jabs of what's wrong with you or we have to do this, those kinds of statements. Let's watch.
Talk to a doctor and see what our options are.
What do I choose? Like later, probably you get pregnant, as I say, you never know.
I feel like it's better to be safe than sorry. It's just saying, it's in God's hands, that doesn't really tell me anything.
So you see the difference in the communication. She says, I think we should talk to a doctor because we should get moving on this. That's not owning your feelings. That's not stating your feelings. It's not stating where you're coming from. Then he says, let's let God choose. Again, probably not stating his feelings. There are other things like with his modeling career, he doesn't just say, well, let's just have God choose for us in terms of me getting a job. No, he does what he needs to do. So obviously, he's not super enthusiastic about getting pregnant right now, it seems to me anyway. So why not just say that? Why not own that? Well, often it's because when people are passive this way, it's because they're terrified that the other person is going to reject them. They might also not even be in connection with what they want in the first place, and their needs are only kind of sneaking through, and then they don't know how to interpret them, and so they just have these kinds of passive statements around what should happen or what needs to happen. And my hypothesis about Stacey from last season was there wasn't any evidence that I could see that showed that she actually was in connection with who she was. I hypothesized that the role that she had in the family when they were growing up was one that was more outwardly focused. She was more focused on helping other people. That was her role. And Darcey was more free to think about herself and to focus on her emotions a lot. It seemed to be that way. And the Darcey role wasn't necessarily healthy. It was just different. But anyway, so let's continue watching this conversation.
Everything is possible. Never say no.
There are options, and I think that we need to
I understand
research
you
them.
have the option. I like to have kids, understand, with you. I love the big family. What do I choose, understand?
All right, well, we almost got to his feelings. Now, maybe that is how he feels. It's possible. He should probably elaborate on that a little bit, but given how Stacey is feeling and talking. But he stated what he wanted. I want to have a big family, he said. Okay, so it's a little bit of intention there, and that might even soothe Stacey along these lines. Let's let God choose. Okay, so is Florian one of those people that just doesn't believe in science or something? Because at a certain point, science can help. Now, consulting with a fertility specialist doesn't mean you have any procedures necessarily. They might just talk about like, well, everything seems to be going well, and maybe just have sex during these particular times of the month, and check back. And so, anyway. But we did hear him owning his feelings. What could he have said that would have helped a little bit more? He could have said, Stacey, I do really want to have a large family. I do want kids. We're both on the same page there. Now maybe there's something about, maybe he needs to talk about what the fertility, procedures or investigation, the professionals is bothering him. He seems to be saying, on one hand, you have fertility professionals, on the other hand, you have God. And I want to go, so is there something about fertility professionals that are bothering him? Maybe he could talk about that.
You know how much I love my kids, and
I know.
you're amazing with my sons, and I just hope that...
It's interesting. Darcey, of course, we see her kids. With Stacey, we have not seen her kids, which honestly I recommend to any reality show cast member that they not involve their kids on camera at all. And Stacey hasn't done that at all. We haven't seen, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't even seen their faces. They haven't been at the family get-togethers, or at least maybe they're in another room or something while they're shooting. And I do recommend that as I've talked about before, children, even teenagers, because you have to consent, you have to sign on the dotted line that you're okay with being on a reality TV show and all the things that come with it. I think all of us understand that children and possibly teenagers cannot sign that paper knowing what they're really signing. Some adults don't really know what they're signing, but at least you have to draw a line somewhere and say, like, well, once you're an adult, once you're 18, you're given you're given certain freedoms, and you have certain responsibilities and consequences to that freedom. But obviously a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, we absolutely know that a 10-year-old, when they're signing a consent form saying, yes, I consent to being on this reality TV show, we all understand that that's not valid consent, right? So I will commend Stacey, I assume, for not having her kids on the show. Now, maybe the kids just refused, who knows? But we just heard an interesting detail that Florian is good with her boys. So apparently she has sons. And that is interesting. I would like to see that. Now, of course, I don't want the kids to be exposed, but that's hard to imagine, but I'll take their word for it. And it, gives a little bit more life to Florian.
But I think if I go back and I go over my life as a father, when I was first married, I was there. But as the children got older, I started doing international assignments. And that, did not allow me to be close to the kids on a daily basis. So
Interesting. I would love it if this show did a lot more of this kind of interview. I'm sure it would be boring to the viewers, but it would be very helpful for me in terms of hypothesis building. And so I have just developed another hypothesis. I always wondered what Darcey and Stacey's childhood was like. I think that their childhood probably went relatively well, but had some sort of abandonment, and there we go. We have a potential hypothesis. We don't know if that is the cause. We can't really know. We can only conceptualize, even if we have all the data. But it seems like a viable hypothesis that for Darcey and Stacey, the dad was a close, important figure in their life. That also comes across as a little standoffish emotionally. And so I might have two hypotheses or two angles of as to why the Darcey and Stacey are, they have difficulty with abandonment. They seem very sensitive. They have trust issues, as they call it. And one possibility is that standoffishness regarding emotionality and attunement that the dad might have possessed. I don't know. Maybe he was the best father of all time. Who knows? I don't have any evidence of that. But he just comes across as a little, I don't know, just, what's the word? God, what is the word? How do you describe it? He's kind of an interesting guy. He just seems kind of, when he's thinking about things, he seems mildly disapproving all the time. Is that the word for it? He seems upset, kind of like resting, mildly disapproving face. Now, maybe he's a lot different in person, but on the show, he comes across that way. And, who knows? Maybe he was like that when he was a kid. So that could be one factor. And then, of course, traveling all the time and the kids missing their father. There's this notion that kids need their mother, but their fathers, who cares? No. We need our parents. We need our caregivers, whoever they are, whatever gender they are. We need them, and we attach to them. And when they are gone, particularly when we're kids, and even when we're teenagers, we miss them and we feel bad. Now, how did he communicate when he was gone? When he came back, how did they bond? How was the grief process every time that he left? What did that look like? Were the kids allowed to talk about things? And then, of course, the older brother died. And I never knew how many siblings they had, but it sounds like it looks like the older brother was just the only sibling. The older brother dies, and that can become a symbolic abandonment, even though you know that you weren't abandoned. Your brother died. There's nothing you can do about it. But it can feel like an abandonment. It can raise your hypervigilance and your fears of losing someone.
Yeah. It's good. They're good. I hope.
Good.
I don't really
They're
know.
so long.
Personally, I don't know, the inside of the relationship because
My mom chose to, kind of filter us out from it. Because of the last two relationships, we were so involved in her love life. But now she kind of wants us to be away from that so it doesn't, hurt us.
Fantastic. Wonderful news. That is great. You'll hear me often talk about this issue of triangulating your kids or having bad boundaries with your children, and it harms them. And yeah, if you are dating, there's various different approaches given the scenario, but generally speaking, they shouldn't know about the ups and downs of your relationship, except for the big ones. I'm now with this person. I am now no longer with this person. Me and this person are going to couples therapy. We're having some troubles. But you don't need to be concerned about that. That's it. Previously, though, with Jesse in particular, they were intimately aware of things, and that is harmful to children. Because, not always, but almost always, because the children, it's too much for them. Even though they act they just showed how old they were, 15 and 14. I thought they were 20 or something. The way that they talk and the way that they hold themselves, I thought they were a lot older. So, which might be evidence of this growing up too fast. Anyway, so great. Good job, Darcey. Progress is progress, absolutely.
flashback to when Mom had the birds and the bees talk in here.
Yeah.
Thinking that we literally don't know what it is. Sister. So awkward.
She wants to think that
Straight
you
out of
guys
middle
are young still and don't know those things.
Because she didn't have her first cousin until she was 18.
So this is a continuation of last episode where they sat down with Darcey and she tried to have an awkward conversation about the birds and the bees, as she said. And the friends are saying, "Oh my God, they think you're so young. We know everything. We already know." No, you don't. I guarantee you that at 14, well, I can't know that, but I'm just going to take a guess and say that at 14 and 15, you do not know everything that you need to know about sexuality. You might know the anatomy, you might know biology, but you do not necessarily know about the emotional side of things, how you make a decision, the sort of pitfalls of sexuality that can happen, how society has already taught you a bunch of things about sexuality that is harmful to you, particularly as young women, as teenage girls. So those are the kinds of, just the full range of conversation needs to happen with kids. And a lot of that should be facilitated through parents, because where else are they going to get it? The internet, so the internet is, it's a good place and a bad place. The internet obviously can be a very bad place when it comes to influencing your children. 100%. It can be literally abusive to children. On the other hand, there's a lot of good information. There are YouTube videos that are geared towards this sort of thing. There are Reddit subreddits where people are communicating in very helpful ways to people. There are subreddits that are very awful to people, of course. So it's a mixed bag for sure. But so we have the internet, which you would want to guide your kids with if you are a parent. And then you have their friends, which are guided by the same internet and by each other, blind leading the blind. And friends can be both good and bad, depending. So I guess as I say this, a lot of what parents need to do is to help the kids delineate between good advice from the internet and from friends and bad advice. And then, of course, at school, which can be extremely limited in my experience regarding what is talked about. You have sex ed or biology class, and it's very narrow in scope. And so it's helpful, but it's extremely narrow. So those are the venues: friends, internet, school, maybe church. And as a parent, you're just going to say, yeah, that's good enough for my kids to learn everything that they need to know about sexuality. I don't think so. All right, well, that does it for that episode in which I react to Darcey and Stacey. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.